In this episode of Student of Life with Joe Hafner, we address the question, what do you believe? Joe will examine core values, one of the fundamental building blocks of fulfillment. He will provide real-life examples, give you 6 steps to creating your own core values, and much more. For show notes, links, and other resources, please visit studentoflifepodcast.com/3. That's studentoflifepodcast.com/3.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. This is Joe Hafner, and of course, this is the Student of Life podcast, which is for people who are seeking personal and professional fulfillment. So today, I am going to talk about what you believe, your core values, the things that are unchanging for you about what you think about about your life and about the world, and how nobody can change the things that are at your core, the things you truly believe. And let me just start by saying, I believe that no one will ever truly know who they are if they don't take time to figure out what they believe. You can never achieve true fulfillment, which, I believe that fulfillment is when the purpose you were put on this earth for is in full alignment with your core values. So obviously, if you don't know your core values, you can't achieve true fulfillment. Core values are one of the most fundamental building blocks of fulfillment. And core values allow you also, through that, to build your personal and your business culture. If you don't know what you believe, how can you attract other people that believe the same things you do? So clearly defined core values allow you to attract the kind of people you want around you. And they repel the kind of people you don't want around you. That's really the beauty of it. People who have never taken the time to think about them just don't realize how knowing who you are with great clarity, knowing what you believe with great clarity, how that attracts people to you who are like-minded, who have the same value system. And even better, the kind of people you wouldn't want to be around you because they believe totally different values than you do. Those people are repelled from you because you're making it clear who you are. And that's a good thing. So let me talk a little bit about how I started on this whole journey of learning, studying core values and implementing into my life all these things that I've been talking about the last couple of weeks and we'll be talking about in the future. Back in 2008, I had the honor, one of the greatest honors of my career actually, one of my mentors, his name was Howard Brinton. And those of you who in real estate who weren't around in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s who were doing any kind of business at all know who Howard Brinton was. He was just a fantastic sales trainer. He built a company called Star Power Systems, and he inspired thousands of real estate agents around the country, around the world really, to get better at what they do. And the way he did it was he would invite the people who were at the top of their business to come into his studio in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and he would do what he called the Star of the Month Club. So one of his agents that he chose would be the star. It was someone who was one of the top 1 or 5% of agents in the country. He would do an interview with them, and then that originally was cassette tapes, and then it was CDs. That would go out to his subscribers, and they'd have the Star of the Month Club. And then once a year, he had a big event, a big conference, where all the top producing agents who were part of his Star Power family, those people who had been interviewed were called stars, Star Power stars, and they would share what they were doing that was helping them be successful, and everybody would learn from each other. And it was just a fantastic setup, and he was just a brilliant man the way he put it all together, and he was one of the most positive, charismatic people I've ever met in my life. In 2008, I had the honor of being chosen as a Star Power star. In May of 2008, I was on my way on a plane to Colorado Springs to do my interview with Howard Brinton. So on the way there, I was thinking about the real estate related stuff I wanted to share with him. But then also, because I am a deep thinker at times, I thought to myself, I want to share something else here that I don't hear other people sharing. And I started thinking about it. I started making a list. I said, what are the things that I believe? What are the things that I know to be true? What do I believe about life and leadership that I might be able to share with other people? So in the course of that flight, I came up with a list of I called it my 18 rules of life and leadership. I'll just go over a couple of these with you. I'll put the full list in the show notes. But like, for instance, I started with number 1, which is always remember that one day you will stand before God and answer for all you've done and all you've failed to do. Well, for me, being a Christ follower, that's a huge deal, that I want to live my life in such a way that when I die and stand before my Maker, he'll say, well done. That's huge. No one's ever going to change my mind on that. But then there were other things, like I said, greatness is impossible without discipline and sacrifice. That's number 5. That's what I believe. I believe if you truly want to be great, you have to sacrifice somewhere in your life, and you have to be able to grind and have discipline in order to find that greatness. You don't have greatness in any area without some sacrifice and without really being focused on what you need to do. Another one is number 9. Expect to learn something new from each person with whom you come in contact. Well, I believe that everybody we meet has some wisdom to share. And I also believe that most of those people won't share it with you unless you ask them to share it with you. And that's the whole basis of my Facebook show that's once a week called Short Attention Span Wisdom. I think I mentioned it in the podcast last week, and we'll do a link to it in the show notes. But I just really enjoy learning what other people have to share, what wisdom they have to share. Then there's another one, number 12. One of the most valuable team members is someone to whom you can assign a task and then remove that task from your mind, secure in the knowledge that it will get done. Those of you who have that outstanding personal assistant where you just give them stuff and you know they're going to do it and they're working behind the scenes while you're doing whatever you're supposed to be doing, and you can know you don't have to check up on them, you don't have to come back around and do it. That is just such a freeing experience to have something like that. Then also, too, let's look at number 17. In a successful sales-driven business, there will always be a certain amount of chaos. If you want order, become an accountant. Those of you who are in sales business, you know that salespeople can be difficult to manage at times. The best salespeople, it's one of those things that usually the thing that is your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. So if you're fantastic at connecting with people and you're fantastic at being convincing to people and selling people on things, well, usually that results in a certain amount of chaos in the office because those people are all connecting with each other and selling each other and having a good time. So I came up with this list on my way to Colorado Springs to do my interview with Howard Brinton, and I came up with 18 things. That was May of 2008. And when I came back, unfortunately, I didn't get to share the whole list on the recording because it was too long. So that kind of set my mind thinking, okay, how do I take this list and really boil it down into something that I can really share with people? When I came back to Murfreesboro after that interview, I really spent some of my quiet time thinking about that list. I'm a little bit of a philosopher. When I graduated from college, I had a minor in philosophy. And I've mentioned this before about René Descartes, the French philosopher, who one of the fathers of modern philosophy. And, he said, cogito ergo sum, which is I think, therefore I am. I really kind of approached that list of my 18 rules with the same kind of mindset that Descartes had when he was trying to figure out what he could know for sure. And if you remember the story, basically he wanted to figure out what could he say for sure he knew. And he had all sorts of thought experiments that he did to try and figure that out. He talked about, if you look up information on him, he talked about what if we're all really brains in a vat with electrodes attached to them and being, basically like we're all living virtual reality kind of stuff back, 16th, 17th century virtual reality. In reality, he was saying, when I really think about it, the only thing I know for sure is that I exist. And the reason I know I exist is because I can think. And because I have thoughts, I am a living being, and that means that I exist. So when I went through my list, I started breaking it down and turning it into something shorter, taking things, putting them together, and really just distilling that list, saying, okay, what do I really believe? What if I get down to a list of a couple things that I really believe? What would those be? And eventually, over several months, I distilled them down to what I consider my core values. I had 5 things that I said about myself, that this is who I am and this is what I believe. And to this day, I still carry this around with me and look at it on a daily basis, because this is not only what I believe, it's an aspirational list as well of what I aspire to be. At times where I don't quite live up to what I aspire to be, the list is a reminder that I need to always be striving to do my best in all these areas. Let me just go over this with you quick. Again, I'll put this in the show notes as well. And you can get those show notes at studentoflifepodcast.com/3. So the first one is integrity. I always do the right thing. Second one is family. If things aren't right at home, you can't be awesome at work. Family comes first whenever it needs to come first. The third one is people. Everyone is fighting an epic battle you can't see. I treat everyone with kindness and compassion. Then the next one is I make a difference. I always seek to have a positive impact on the world and the people I serve. And the last one is the best. I do whatever it takes to be the best in whatever endeavor I choose to pursue. That's kind of like my personal constitution, so to speak. It's a list of values that I hold dear, that those are what I believe. That's who I want to be and who I believe I am. No amount of convincing is gonna get me to decide that that's not the case. You're never going to get me to change my mind on those things. That's what I believe. Those are my core values. What's kind of funny is, sometimes God has a plan for your life that you don't even realize. I was working on those things. Remember, this is May of 2008. Those of you in real estate remember that 2008 was the year that the market crashed. Some of you in Florida, California, Michigan, Las Vegas, your market was already crashing in May of 2008. I was still blissfully ignorant at that time, thinking the market was awesome. And then on October 1st, 2008, the whole thing came crashing down. That's when TARP was put into place, and that's when the banks were forced to take their deal, and that's when the recession hit, October 1st, 2008. And you know what? I have the last podcast, number 2, is all about how my character was shaped and the whole story of what I did during that recession. And it might be interesting listening for you. You can go to that one at studentoflifepodcast.com/2, and we'll put a link in the show notes to that one. As the recession happened, when I finally got out of denial, when it first happened, I realized that I needed to go another way with my real estate business and really started focusing on distressed property instead of flipping houses and regular real estate and other things I had been doing. I made the decision that I was going to build my business according to my core values, that I was going to filter my decisions through that list of core values, that I was going to make who I was in my business the same as who I was personally. And I was going to share that with people so they knew who I was and what I was doing. It really made a huge difference. It had a bigger impact than I ever dreamed possible when I first decided to do that. It was kind of like a little experiment I was doing, my little petri dish of taking me, because it was just me doing the distressed property at first. Eventually, I ended up with a team of me and 2 other people. But at the beginning, it was me just putting that into place and saying, these are the things I believe. By the time the recession was over, so that was 2008, by the time 2012, 2013 rolled around, I was known as the premier distressed property agent in Middle Tennessee. In our market, we never had more than 35 or 40% of the market was distressed property. So there were a lot of agents who were able to scrape out a living working that other, 60% of the market that was the traditional normal real estate. But because I was known as the premier distressed property expert, 90% of my business by the end of the recession was referrals from other agents who didn't want to work those short sales. The rest, it was just amazing what can happen because I really had a roadmap in front of me that I filtered my decisions through those core values. And then, in 2011, I became a listing agent for HUD, and that was selling people who had FHA loans and had been foreclosed on. HUD takes those houses back and then sells them. And I was one of the agents that was hired to sell those houses, to be a listing agent for HUD. In 2011, one of my core values is the best. I do whatever it takes to be the best. And by that time, I had a team of me and one other person, and we had a near perfect scorecard for HUD. I mean, that scorecard, we couldn't have had a perfect scorecard if we weren't applying things through those core beliefs and those core values. When I gave that to the team, I was fortunate that my team was fully on board right from the beginning, probably because I was very enthusiastic about it as I gave it to them, and I believed it wholeheartedly. So the beauty of it was I discovered that doing those core values and having my team on board with that and them knowing how to filter decisions through those, it allowed all of us to run full speed ahead in the same direction. And we had complete clarity about who we are and what we believed as a team. It allowed all of us to filter our decisions through those core values. And I didn't have to be involved in every decision that my team made. How many of you out there who run a business are a bottleneck because every decision that gets made has to be filtered through you? Imagine if your team could know who you are, what you believe, what you stand for, and they can make decisions on their own because they understand those things. So those core values, they were a roadmap. We were able to clearly articulate that to other people, and the value of knowing what I believed and knowing what we believed as a team was just immense. As I said, I had the best selling years of my whole career during that time in a recession. Sold the most property I've ever sold as an agent during that time. Once that played out and the market started to turn around, I had an opportunity to move to the current company where I'm the managing broker. It was a brand new firm that was just starting in 2015. And having those core values, again, played a huge role in that, because when I met with the man who was starting the firm and was able to clearly articulate, this is who I am and this is what I believe, we were pretty quickly able to determine that we both had similar value systems and both had similar beliefs about how we should operate a business. And it made it that much easier to move forward with him and help him build his company. It was incredibly exciting to have a company to build, because when we went in there, I was like, the first thing we got to do, again, another petri dish for me to play in. We need to run this company by core values. We need to figure out who we are, what we believe as a company, and we need to run the whole company by these core values. When you have a shared group of people who are operating on the foundation of those core values, who have complete clarity, you can build just an amazing culture when that happens. Now, I didn't know that completely at the time. Like I said, I was kind of experimenting because it had worked for my little team of 3 people. Now I was going to be building a company, and we were going to use this as one of the ways to get that company going. And so we spent several months coming up with the core values for Elam Real Estate, where I am now. Again, we came up with kind of a constitution for the company, and we called it the non-negotiables. Those non-negotiables were something that allowed us to tell people who we are and what we believed. And let me just go through these quick. It says our non-negotiables. We have the right people who do it the right way in the right culture. We do the right thing for our clients right now. And each one of those, we have it laid out with a sentence underneath each one that gives it a little more context for people. We put those in place, and we immediately began filtering all of our staff and agent decisions through those core values. I mean, it was literally, if a new agent was coming to meet with us and we were considering bringing them on, the first thing I would do is I would sit them down and say, okay, let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what we believe. And I would go through those core values, and I would give examples for each one of what they meant. And then when I was done, I would say, okay, that's a little bit about who we are and what we believe. Do you have any thoughts or questions? And it was amazing what we found as we did that. I could sit there and go, first off, nobody ever does that. You go to an interview as an agent and they talk about commission splits, and they talk about, here's how much money you can make, here's the leads you can get, here's the support you get, here's the training you can get. No one ever sits an agent down and says, hey, this is what we believe. Do you believe something similar? Right there, we had an advantage over a lot of other firms with people who thought like we did. And it was kind of interesting as you sat there going through them, watching people's eyes. The ones who had similar belief systems to us, you could see them getting more and more excited as you went through it. But the other part is the ones who maybe didn't have the same belief system as us, you could see them getting a look in their eyes like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. they'd leave and we'd never hear from them again. And that's a good thing because it saved us from bringing people into our culture who are not in agreement with what we believed. When you have that in place and you start filtering people through it, the people who want to build something similar to you, they're going to join you enthusiastically. And the people who don't agree with what you believe, they're going to remove themselves from consideration. You don't have to make that decision. They do it for you. And what we found, the happy experiment, that the happy discovery that we got was that when we started to fill our team with people who shared our beliefs and our values, we started to develop a really strong culture, a culture where everybody was pulling in the same direction. You know, when you step back and you really think about it, if you put a bunch of people who are similar in their belief system and together in an endeavor, the odds are really good that they're all going to get along with each other. The odds are good that they're going to be pulling in the same direction. So that's exactly what happened to us. And then once we had that part established, the next thing was, well, why aren't we sharing these core values with our clients? When someone's thinking of buying or selling real estate, usually when they go to see their agent, the agent doesn't start by, hey, let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what we believe. They say, oh, you want to look at these houses? Oh, are you pre-qualified? And they go through those things. But it was pretty amazing when we started going through that with our clients. I started myself as the managing broker. You know, I do a lot of training. I do a lot of problem solving, those sorts of things. I don't meet with a ton of clients, but it started getting to the point where whenever I met with a client, whether I was sitting there with an agent or sitting there with a client of my own, I started those meetings by saying, hey, let me tell you about Elam Real Estate. This is who we are. This is what we believe. And I would go through those core values with them. And I never had, when I would finish and I would say, so that's a little bit about who we are and what we believe. Do you have any thoughts or questions about that? I've had 100% positive response to that from the clients who sit there because it blows them away. Because we're setting ourselves apart from everybody else out there. There's other people who have mission statements and vision statements and things hanging on the wall. Some people even have core values hanging on the wall. But very few people make it a part of who they are and present it to all their clients that this is who we are. It makes your life a lot easier when you say who you are to people, because then they know what to expect. And then you know what you can expect from them, and you know how to respond to them as you're going through the process of doing the deal. Just imagine how much better your life would be if you could spend the large majority of your time with like-minded people. How enjoyable would that be, and how much more productive would you be if that was the case? That's a very freeing experience to have that. There's a lot fewer conflicts when you're in that situation. The other thing with that is when you have a company that is built on that, or your personal team is built on that, or the way you live your life is built on that, you can clearly explain to people why you're doing or not doing things as you go through the business process. In the real estate process, I can say, hey, we're doing this because that fits with our core values. You know, we do things the right way, and this is the right way to do it. And then also, too, it allows your team to run forward towards your vision without needing your input on everything. So you can build a bigger team where everybody has bought into what you believe and they're running forward, filtering things through your belief system. So most cultures occur organically. Nobody ever gives much thought to whether or not they're building the culture the way they want to. I heard one sales trainer say, if you hire great people, you'll automatically have a great culture. And I would disagree with that, in that you might have a good culture if you just hire great people, but then your people are going to create the culture they want, not the culture you want. If you have core values and you say, this is who we are and this is what we believe, your culture is going to grow, not somebody else's. And it's going to grow purposefully, not organically. So when you have a great culture and your team's doing what it needs to, and they're all on board what you believe, it just feeds itself. It's pretty amazing. If you have customers who have a great experience and believe what you believe, they send you more customers just like them. When you have team members who love your culture and they believe in your core values, guess what? They tell their friends how great it is to work there, and their friends who have the same belief system as them try to recruit them to come join your team. Having strong, clearly defined core values it doesn't eliminate all your problems, but having that strong foundation eliminates a lot of problems that would normally arise in your culture if you didn't have those core values in place. It eliminates a lot of issues that would otherwise show up in your client relations if you didn't have those core values in place. When you have those strong, clearly articulated core beliefs, it gives you permission to call people out when they're acting contrary to your core beliefs. Where you can say, you can gently tell your clients, hey, we're not going to do that because that's not in concert with what I believe. Hey, remember what I told you what I believed? Well, this is why we're not doing what you're saying you want to do at this point. Or with your team, hey, this is what we believe. You're operating over here. That's not in concert with what we believe. We need to clean that behavior up. And also, too, if as the culture gets stronger and stronger, the culture starts to police itself. And your other team members are going to correct the team members who are getting out of line with what they're doing, which is a pretty amazing thing. So you don't have to be the bad guy all the time. Your culture will hold people in line. I've seen all of this work. I saw it work with my small team of 3 people. I've seen it work for several years now with this new company, Elam Real Estate, that's been around for over 2 years now. I've been able to help some non-real estate entrepreneurs begin to implement this into their business, and it's working for them. So it's not just a real estate thing. If you make core values one of the fundamental building blocks of your life and your business, you're going to have positive results. I can tell you unequivocally that this stuff works. Let's wrap up the podcast by going through some of the steps that you can take to create core values for yourself and your business. I always want to try and give you some action steps here at the end of a podcast, so it's not just theory and thinking things through. What can we do to start putting these things in place? So it doesn't matter if you're on your own, if you're part of if you own your own company, if you're running a division within an operation, you can do these things and have them produce results for you. So let's talk about step 1. Step 1 is to understand that building out your core values is a process. You can't fast track it. Some of you want to do everything at 100 miles an hour. This is something where you have to slow down. You have to think it through. You have to allow time for reflection. You have to allow your ideas to marinate and develop. You can't do this quickly. It won't work if you haven't really given yourself time to really dig down and figure out what you believe. So that's step 1. Understand it's a process. Step 2, you need quiet time, fully unplugged, no interruptions, no cell phone, no music, just quiet. Wherever you go for your quiet time. Let me just say this. If you are not having quiet time on a regular basis to think and reflect and build your business or figure out your life plan and those things, you're really cheating yourself out of opportunities to be very successful. My quiet time is something that I cherish because that's where I get my deep thinking done. In your quiet time, you want to just start by writing a list of what you believe about life and business. Kind of like I did my 18 rules of life and leadership that I did on that plane ride to Colorado Springs. When you're doing that, let's think about it this way. What are the fundamental truths upon which you've built your life and your business? What do you believe? Why do you believe you've been successful where you've been successful? What things do you need to be doing? What do you believe about yourself that you want the world to know about you? If you were to die tomorrow, what epitaph would you want written on your gravestone about who you were and what you thought? Don't worry about the length of the list. Don't worry if it's 10 items or 100 items or 1,000 items. Just get them all written down and just work on that list. So step 3, once you have that list basically done, you want to live with it for a while. You want to go back with your quiet time and add to the list and reflect on it and read it and figure out, hey, these things kind of go together. How can I combine these into one thing? You know what? This one maybe not as important as these others. Maybe I don't need this one on there. And you go through and you edit the list. You continue to work on it. Rank them in order of priority. This is the most important to me. This is the least important to me. And you want to do that as long as it takes until you start whittling down that list. You start getting down to the essence of who you are and what you believe. So then there's step 4. Step 4 is you keep repeating step 3 until you believe you have a strong list that you can own. And by own, I mean you're not afraid to share it with other people. You're not afraid to declare to the world, this is what I believe. You're not embarrassed to tell your team, this is who I am. You want to be able to own it and be proud of it. That whole process, depending on how deep a thinker you are, could take weeks, months. It could probably take years. I would say at some point you got to stop thinking about it and do something. But just own that list for a while and work on it until you're done and you're ready. And then you want to take that final list and you want to boil that list down to 3 to 5 overriding principles. On those 3 to 5 principles, you want to make sure you have complete clarity on those, that you can talk about them backwards and forwards, that you know exactly what you mean by them. The best way to do it really is to have a single word or a single phrase so that you can repeat it easily, so that you can remember it easily. You want to figure out, how am I comfortable verbalizing these thoughts, these concepts? Can I say them in a way that flows well? Is there a way that I can say it where I feel real good about the way I'm saying it? Are there real life examples I can give or analogies that people will easily understand that describes the point I'm trying to make here? And then really the last question is, when you're working on that list, do you really believe them? And by really believe them, I mean, is the proof evident in your life that you're living them out? Because you could say, hey, this is what I believe, but if you're not living it out, people are going to see right through that. People are going to look at your life, and if your life doesn't match up to what you say your core values are, they're not going to believe a word you say. So if you're not living them out and you want something to be your core value, that's really kind of step 4A, is make some changes so you can get your life in line with what you believe and live it out that way. All right, so let's go to step 5. Step 5 is you want to create a final core values document. So all that is you articulate everything very clearly in writing. And like I said, a single word or a statement that you, and if you're going to use this for your business, and really if you have a business, the best way in your business is start out with your core values and make that what your business's core values are. Take those statements or those single words and make it so you can easily explain it to others. Give it away to your team so they can easily explain it to others. Make sure that you've got it all very articulate and clearly defined in writing. And then step 6 is you start giving your core values away to other people. So like I said, if you have a team, that's the first place to share it. When you give your core values to your existing team, listen to their feedback that they're going to give you, but be very clear that this is what you believe and that you need everyone to be on board with it if they're going to be part of your team. Don't compromise what you believe. If you've done this properly, you've spent probably several months thinking this through and really distilling down who you are and what you believe. Don't throw it away just because someone on your team disagrees with it or you get pushback from people. Sometimes the people that you're closest to, your closest friends and family, are going to be the ones who push back on you the hardest. That's why you got to spend that quiet time and make sure you really believe it so that when you do get pushback, you can stand strong and say, well, this is who I am and this is what I believe and this is what I'm going forward with. Don't compromise on it. And if you have a team and you give this away, you're probably going to lose people. You might even lose a key person or key people on your team. But here's the thing. In the long run, if you lose key people because they're not their thought process and their beliefs are not in alignment with yours, in the long run, you're going to be better off because you're going to have a stronger team when you bring on people whose belief systems are in alignment with yours and you're all running together towards your vision of what you want your company to be. So stay strong and allow the people not in alignment with your beliefs. Give them an opportunity to come on board with your core values. Don't just tell them to leave. Say, hey, look, this is where we're going. This is where this company's going. I really want you on board. Can you be on board with this? And if they say no, say, well, if you can't be on board, it's not going to work. But if they say yes, give them an opportunity to prove they're on board. And here's what I can tell you. When you first implement this, if your team has their own culture built up and there's people in there who are cancers to your team and you have factions within your team and problems with that, when you first come up with this, they're going to think that, oh, this is something that's just a passing fancy that's going to go away after a little while, and they're going to wait for you to give up on it. But when they see that you're serious about this and that you're really using this and implementing this, the people who aren't on board, the cancers in your organization, you'll be amazed at how they just remove themselves from the equation. If they realize that they can't have the influence they had and they can't do the things that they want to do, and it becomes uncomfortable for them because there's a spotlight shining on them because they're at odds with you, they're going to remove themselves. And then as you go forward, use your core values to filter new team members. Use your core values to talk to your clients. Use them in everything you do. People, if you've ever read Simon Sinek's book, The Power of Why, it's all about your big why. People don't do business with you because of what you do. They do business with you because of why you do it. And if you can articulate, this is who I am, this is what I believe, people want to do business with people that they have commonality with, people that they feel a connection with. If you're just selling stuff or just doing a service and there's no substance to it, you're just a commodity. You're just someone that they can use you and go on to the next thing. But if you're someone who strongly says, hey, I believe this is why I do what I do, and I can help you because of why I do this, people who buy into that and see that and have common interest with you and know what you believe and like what you believe, those are the kind of people who become customers, and they're working with you because of your value system, not because they're looking at you as a commodity. And that's when you can really build a business and really build a customer base that stays with you. You want to share those core values with your team, with your clients, with everybody you meet, really. And you want to make sure that you're living them out. Every once in a while, you need to do a little check of yourself and say, hey, am I compromising on my core beliefs anywhere in my life? And if you are, you need to clean that up. And that's really, honestly, that's why all these years later, almost 10 years later, I still carry my core values around with me and look at them almost every day, because I want to make sure that I'm living out what I'm telling the world I am. So that's the end of our core values session. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to Student of Life at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you go to for your favorite podcasts. Visit us online at studentoflifepodcast.com. That's studentoflifepodcast.com. We are on Facebook at Student of Life. Email us at joe@studentoflifepodcast.com. If you enjoyed the show, help us spread the word by telling someone you know about Student of Life. And please join us again next time. Thanks!